The War of the Worlds. The War of the Worlds.
Let me take you down, 'cause I'm going to meet the man on Putney Hill. Oh yes, I am. Hello everybody, welcome back to the podcast with me, Nanny. And here we go for chapter 7, The Man on Putney Hill. If you've ever been to Putney Hill, well, you know what I mean. You can see a beautiful sunset from Putney Hill. If you've never been, once all this lockdown nonsense is over, get yourselves down to Putney and have a look at Putney Hill. All right, let's get started then.
7. The Man on Putney Hill. I spent that night in the inn that stands at the top of Putney Hill, sleeping in a made bed for the first time since my flight to Leatherhead. I will not tell the needless trouble I had breaking into that house. Afterwards I found the front door was on the latch, nor how I ransacked every room for food until, just on the verge of despair, in what seemed to me to be a servant's bedroom, I found a rat-gnawed crust and 2 tins of pineapple. The place had already been searched and emptied. In the bar I afterwards found some biscuits and sandwiches that had been overlooked. The latter I could not eat. They were too rotten. But the former not only stayed my hunger, but filled my pockets. I lit no lamps, fearing some Martian might come beating that part of London for food in the night. Before I went to bed, I had an interval of restlessness, and prowled from window to window, peering out for some sign of these monsters. I slept little. As I lay in bed, I found myself thinking consecutively, a thing I could not remember to have done since my last argument with the curate. During all the intervening time, my mental condition had been a hurrying succession of vague emotional states, or of a stupid receptivity. But in the night, my brain, reinforced, I suppose, by the food I had eaten, grew clear again, and I thought.
Okay, let's have a little look at this then. So, just looking at the chapter heading itself, The Man on Putney Hill. Well, that's quite a relief. I mean, we've just literally been told in the previous chapter that it feels like he's the last man standing, the last man standing on the whole world. And here we have the Man on Putney Hill. Now, that could be the narrator, couldn't it? But it could also be somebody else, more likely to be somebody else. So this gives us a sense of hope that he's not the only person left alive, that there are other human creatures too. So that's quite a positive note, a little bit of energy there for this chapter. And then, I'm just leaning on the old Joanna there. Let me just turn the Joanna off, that's it. Right, what else did I say? Oh yeah, look at the amount of personal pronouns in this paragraph. I spent the night in that inn. I will not tell. I had break-in. I have found the front door on the latch. I ransacked every room. You know, I mean, if you wanted to, I'm not saying you have to by any means, but if you wanted to, you could have put a little circle around all the I's, all the personal pronouns, if you wanted to. And what you'd find is that it's like a little dot-to-dot picture, and it makes the face of a Martian. No, it doesn't really. But what it does do is it shows how this is now about him. It's back to the narrator. He's back in control. He's found some food, and this is about narrative progression. So the personal pronouns, which are a language point, help to give narrative progression, which is a structural point. This is a sense he's picked himself up now. He's grabbed the bull with both hands. Is that what you say? Grab the bull by the horns. That's what they say, don't they? Grab the thistle, grab the bull by its horns, and off we go. That's one thing they're doing. But also, look at this. He's found food. He's obsessed with food, isn't he? But no wonder, because he's been starving he's been Hank Marvin for a few days, isn't he? So he's found some food, and that's a relief because, of course, we've had lots of talk about how hungry and thirsty he is, and this is a real positive lift for him and also for the reader as well. Don't forget, we're on board as well, and so it makes it more positive. It feels like this could be a turning point, and indeed it is a turning point. So let's find out a bit more about why it is. Let's carry on with the narrative.
3 things struggled for possession of my mind: the killing of the curate, the whereabouts of the Martians, and the possible fate of my wife. The former gave me no sensation of horror or remorse to recall. I saw it simply as a thing done, a memory infinitely disagreeable but quite without the quality of remorse. I saw myself then, as I see myself now, driven step by step towards that hasty blow, the creature of a sequence of accidents leading inevitably to that.
Now, I don't think for 1 minute that they'll take this extract for the exam, but you never know, and we have to be prepared, don't we? So this is a very philosophical part of the book, and bear in mind that the narrator is a philosophical writer, and by philosophical I simply mean that he's thinking about the moral decisions he's made, the ethical decisions he's made. He's contemplating 3 things. He's got time to think. He's got food in his belly. He's got a license for his telly, and nothing's going to get him down. I know that's a Paolo Nutini song, isn't it? No, that's not what I mean. But he has got food in his belly, and he has got drink in his belly, and so now he's able to think rationally, and he's thinking about killing the curate, or causing the death of the curate. Really, he refers to it as the killing of the curate, but really, I mean, he just knocked him down. We don't know if he killed him. Certainly the marshals did. So he certainly led to the curate's death. But look at this. He feels no condemnation. He feels no remorse. It was simply a thing that had to be done. But he's weighing up the moral and ethics of what he did. So it's a very existential and philosophical section of the book. Now, you won't need that unless it comes up in the exam, so do write it down just in case.
I felt no condemnation, yet the memory, static, unprogressive, haunted me. In the silence of the night, with that sense of the nearness of God that sometimes comes into the stillness and the darkness, I stood my trial, my only trial, for that moment of wrath and fear. I retraced every step of our conversation, from the moment when I had found him crouching beside me, heedless of my thirst, and pointing to the fire and smoke that streamed up from the ruins of Weybridge. We had been incapable of cooperation. Grim chance had taken no heed of that. Had I foreseen, I should have left him at Halliford. But I did not foresee, and crime is to foresee and do. And I set this down, as I have set all this story down, as it was. There were no witnesses. All these things I might have concealed. But I set it down, and the reader must form his judgment as he will.
Oh, sorry. My heavy hands on the Joanna again. Oh dear. Sounds quite ominous, that chord, doesn't it? I wonder what that is. Probably a C-sharp demented, something like that. Anyway, look at that. This is perspective again. He says, I set this down as I've set all this story down as it was. Now, let's not be fooled. This isn't real life. This is simply a fiction. It's a story. But he's making it seem like it's non-fiction. He's presenting fiction as fact. And he says there were no witnesses. All these things I might have concealed, but I set it down, and the reader must form his judgment as he will. So he's addressing the reader directly. That's us. That's you and I. And he's breaking the fourth wall again. I mean, you can't write that in the exam, of course, because this isn't a theatrical production, but it does that same effect. It's addressing the reader. It's direct address, and it makes it feel very real and authentic, and presenting. H.G. Wells is presenting fiction as fact, and that makes it all the more frightening. So you can add all these little things together. In fact, when you're revising for the exam, I'd make a poster, and I'd have things like all the little self-references he makes to having written it in the present about the past. So I would be looking for those examples, and that's one of them there.
And when, by an effort, I had set aside that picture of a prostrate body, I faced the problem of the Martians and the fate of my wife. For the former, I had no data. I could imagine 100 things, and so, unhappily, I could for the latter. And suddenly that night became terrible. I found myself sitting up in bed, staring at the dark. I found myself praying that the heat ray might have suddenly and painlessly struck her out of being. Since the night of my return from Leatherhead, I had not prayed. I had uttered prayers, fetish prayers, had prayed as heathens mutter charms when I was in extremity. But now I prayed indeed, pleading steadfastly and sanely, face to face with the darkness of God.
So here we have it, the turning back to God again, the repetition of the word praying and prayed and prayers. This is a structural point in a list, an asyndetic list. So we've got lots of structure happening here to show how he's turning to God, he's finding his spiritual self, and he's having communion with God. He's desperate, and look at the clauses, the repetition and succession of relative subordinate clauses here. So things like pleading steadfastly and sanely is an embedded relative subordinate clause, and it just shows how that the length and breadth and depth, and other words ending in eth, that is the extent he's going to reach God, the desperations of man. And that's what he is, face to face with the darkness of God. Oh, yes.
Strange night. Strangest in this, that so soon as dawn had come, I, who had talked with God, crept out of the house like a rat, leaving its hiding place, a creature scarcely larger, an inferior animal, a thing that for any passing whim of our masters might have been hunted and killed.
There again, look, he's referring to himself as a little animal, a rat, and you've seen this, it's a simile, isn't it? It's a language technique, but we've seen this all the way throughout the book, from the very first page, when humanity is compared to the infusoria under the microscope. And here we have it here, always reducing mankind down to little creatures, whether they be ants or bees or wasps or bacteria or rabbits, or in this case rats, and making humanity feel very, very vulnerable and very humble, which certainly what you could do in the exam is apply that to the time in which it was written, when the British readership would, of course, felt very powerful at that time, given the status of the British Empire and the rising status of the empire. It's getting bigger and more powerful towards the end of the 1800s. It grew even more up until World War I, really. So this is a time really when H.G. Wells is pulling the rug from under the British readers' feet to make them realise how fragile and vulnerable they really are.
Perhaps they also prayed confidently to God. Surely, if we have learnt nothing else, this war has taught us pity. Pity for those witless souls that suffer our dominion.
Now, up until this point, H.G. Wells has left it fairly unsaid, really, and we've had to use our noggins, haven't we, to work out the message. Now, he's telling us here, a little bit heavy-handed, I would say, a bit like me on the Aunt Joanna, a bit heavy-handed, you know what I mean, like that, a bit heavy-handed. And what he's doing is he's telling us what to think. He's telling the reader what to think. He's saying, surely if we've learned nothing else, this war has taught us pity, pity for those witless souls that suffer our dominion. Now, of course, he's referring to the Tasmanians, isn't he? He's referring to the people that the British Empire have colonised. So just in case we missed the message, he's hammering it home to us. He's hammering it home to us just to make sure we don't forget. So, for my taste, a little bit heavy-handed from H.G. Wells, a little bit ugly, if I'm honest, but there it is. Just in case we missed the message, he's telling us anyway how we should feel about this. So definitely one for the context. If you're colour coding this for AO3, then definitely get your colours out for that one.
The morning was bright and fine, and the eastern sky glowed pink and was fretted with little golden clouds. In the road that runs from the top of Putney Hill to Wimbledon was a number of poor vestiges of the panic torrent that must have poured Londonward on the Sunday night after the fighting began. There was a little two-wheeled cart inscribed with the name of Thomas Loeb, greengrocer, New Malden, with a smashed wheel and an abandoned tin trunk. There was a straw hat trampled into the now hardened mud, and at the top of West Hill a lot of blood-stained glass about the overturned water trough. My movements were languid, my plans of the vaguest. I had an idea of going to Leatherhead, though I knew that there I had the poorest chance of finding my wife. Certainly, unless death had overtaken them suddenly, my cousins and she would have fled thence. But it seemed to me I might find or learn there whither the Surrey people had fled. I knew I wanted to find my wife, that my heart ached for her and the world of men, but I had no clear idea how the finding might be done. I was also sharply aware now of my intense loneliness. From the corner, I went, under cover of a thicket of trees and bushes, to the edge of Wimbledon Common, stretching wide and far.
So, main thing really is the use of proper nouns here, the language point of these places and the people. We've got Thomas Lobb, the greengrocer, New Malden, Leatherhead, Wimbledon Common, Surrey, and then further on we get Mortlake and all this lot and the other. So we've got these proper nouns, gives it sense of authenticity. We know this by now, we've done it for weeks and weeks on end, but it does the same thing. And of course these places are all getting nearer to London, so you've got that sense of incrementum. But you've also got narrative progression, because now he's got a refocused, determined mission to get to his wife in Leatherhead, or, to be reunited with her, and as he says, be among a world of men. Now, it doesn't mean men as in men and women. It does mean men and women. It means mankind. It means everybody, not just a world of actual men, but mankind. That's just how it was expressed in the Victorian period. It meant all humanity, not manatees, not the cows of the oceans, but humankind, humanity.
The dark expanse was lit in patches by yellow gorse and broom. There was no red weed to be seen, and as I prowled, hesitating, on the verge of the open, the sun rose, flooding it all with light and vitality. I came upon a busy swarm of little frogs in a swampy place among the trees. I stopped to look at them, drawing a lesson from their stout resolve to live, and presently, turning suddenly, with an odd feeling of being watched, I beheld something crouching amid a clump of bushes. I stood regarding this. I made a step towards it, and it rose up and became a man, armed with a cutlass. I approached him, slowly. He stood silent and motionless, regarding me.
Oh dear, oh dear. So this is the Man on Putney Hill that the title refers to. The title was foreshadowing this event, and here it is, the Man on Putney Hill. And look how the sentences have contracted. They're getting smaller and smaller. They're getting shorter to make that sort of increased tension, that heartbeat of the novel. Oh, I thought I was going to be sick then. It's that's the effect, isn't it? It makes it much more tense. And of course here he is, armed with a cutlass now. I've been reading this to my grandchildren. Cutlass, I've been reading Treasure Island by Robbie Louis Stevenson. You know, the one with all the pirates and the swashbuckling and the buccaneers. Oh, it's a wonderful adventure. And yeah, they've got their fair share of cutlasses. Just a little sword, that's all, isn't it? Just a little, usually a kind of curved sword, I think. And that's what he's got here. Now, who is it? Who's the man on Putney Hill? It's the artilleryman, isn't it? Yes, that's him. We've come back again. It's an anaphoric reference back to earlier in the text. So anaphoric. ANAPHORIC. That's anaphoric reference. So we're not quite there yet because we don't know who he is, but when we do get to that point, you can jot it down. Anaphoric reference. Yep, there you go. And that is a structural point because it's linking back to something earlier in the sequence.
As I drew nearer, I perceived he was dressed in clothes as dusty and filthy as my own. He looked, indeed, as though he had been dragged through a culvert. Nearer, I distinguished the green slime of ditches mixing with the pale drab of dried clay and shiny, coaly patches. His black hair fell over his eyes, and his face was dark and dirty and sunken, so that at first I did not recognize him. There was a red cut across the lower part of his face.
Notice here, these are all clues, aren't they? It's all withholding information. He's not telling us that he recognises him. He's making us sort of on the edge of our seats, isn't he? He's making us engaged as readers. He says that I didn't recognise him. Well, that means that at some point very soon he does recognise him. So we have to keep reading to find out who this person is. And of course we know, and you know, having read this book 100 times before, that of course it's the artilleryman. But it's all ramping up the tension.
"Stop!" he cried, when I was within 10 yards of him, and I stopped. His voice was hoarse. "Where do you come from?" he said. I thought, surveying him. "I come from Mortlake," I said. "I was buried near the pit the Martians made about their cylinder. I have worked my way out and escaped." "There's no food about here," he said. "This is my country. All this hill, down to the river, and back to Clapham, and up to the edge of the common. There was only food for one. Which way are you going?"
Oh, he's a forceful young man, isn't he? This man on Putney Hill. Well, first thing, let's look at that map that you've got out on the table with you as you read through the book, and you can see how he's charted out his territory, like a dog marking out his. I don't know if he's done what dogs do when they mark out their territory. Who only knows? But we get the impression that he's marked out his territory down the river and back to Clapham and up to the edge of Wimbledon Common, you see. So he's marked out a big area of land, and he says there's only food for one. Now look at his personal pronouns. Just have a look at those personal pronouns, would you? What lovely personal pronouns he's got. This is my country, my country. So you've got that personal pronoun, personal possessive pronoun, if you please. And, that's it, only one actually. And his use of interrogatives. He's out asking questions. "Where do you come from?" he said. And then he says, "Which way are you going?" Using interrogatives. Interrogatives, that's a structural feature because it's a type of sentence and it's an interrogative question, interrogative clause, and it just means that he's asking questions because he's demanding answers and he's trying to show his control over the situation. And when we realise he's the artilleryman, of course, that makes perfect sense. But he's a survivor, and just as the narrator is a survivor. So I suppose a point you need to take away before I stop this a little bit is that it's changed humanity. You see, it's changed humanity, and not for the better. It's made them weary and not so clever. Yeah, that's what it's done to humanity, hasn't it? Okay.
I answered slowly. I don't know, I said. I've been buried in the ruins of a house 13 or 14 days. I don't know what has happened." He looked at me doubtfully, then started and looked with a changed expression. "I've no wish to stop about here," said I. "I think I shall go to Leatherhead, for my wife was there." He shot out a pointing finger. "It is you," said he. "The man from Woking. And you weren't killed at Weybridge?" I recognized him at the same moment. "You are the artilleryman who came into my garden." "Good luck," he said. "We are the lucky ones. Ugh, fancy you." He put out a hand, and I took it. "I crawled up a drain," he said, "but they didn't kill everyone. And after they went away, I got off towards Walton, across the fields. But it's not 16 days altogether. And your hair is grey." He looked over his shoulder suddenly. "Only a rook," he said. "One gets to know that birds have shadows these days. This is a bit open. Let us crawl under those bushes and talk." "Have you seen any Martians?" I said. "Since I crawled out?" "They've gone away, across London," he said. "I guess they've got a bigger camp now. Of a night, all over there, Hampstead way. The sky is alive with their lights. It's like a great city. And in the glare, you can just see 'em, moving. By daylight, you can't. But nearer, I haven't seen 'em." He counted on his fingers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days. And I saw a couple across Hammersmith way, carrying something big. And the night before last." He stopped and spoke impressively. "It was just a matter of lights, but it was something up in the air. I believe they've built a flying machine, and they're learning to fly."
So you notice that these events are tallying up with what the brothers saw in the other narrative, in the Thunderchild chapter, before in the end of book 1, you see, because he saw a flying light up in the sky too, didn't he? He saw a flying machine up there in the sky. And so this all adds authenticity. It's like we've seen 3 different perspectives now. We've had the brother's perspective, we've had the narrator's perspective, and now we're getting the artilleryman's perspective. And of course they all coincide to give the same view, and that makes it seem like it must be real. And that's what H.G. Wells is going for, authenticity and credibility. But look how, in terms of characterisation, that the artilleryman is he's not really all there, is he? He's lost the plot a little bit, and he's sort of having to count on his fingers. He's scared of birds' shadows. I mean, understandable, I suppose. He's survived this far by being careful, but he's very scared to even talk to the narrator out in the open. He wants to get under cover to talk privately, because he's become he already was very paranoid, wasn't he? And if you remember, he was quite defeatist and pessimistic earlier in the book. So you'll want to, we'll talk more about this, but you'll want to be aware of, I would say, of his character development, but we'll get onto that as we get a bit further in.
I stopped, on hands and knees, for we had come to bushes. "Fly?" "Yeah," he said. "Fly." I went on into a little bower and sat down. "It's all over with humanity," I said. "If they can do that, they will simply go round the world." He nodded. "They will. But it will relieve things over here a bit. And besides," he looked at me, "aren't you satisfied it is up with humanity? I am. We're down. We're beat."
So, in terms of characterisation, you've got the artilleryman here, who we remember from earlier in the novel, was very pessimistic, very defeatist. And here he still is, isn't he? He continues in that way. But look how the narrator is also similarly pessimistic. It's the narrator who says it's all over with humanity, and the artilleryman agrees and nods. But he says, aren't you satisfied? It is up with humanity, because he is. I am. We're down. We're beat. And if you want to get really specific, you could say that the syntactic parallelism there of we're down, we're beat, emphasises how final this feeling of defeat really is. So it's syntactic parallelism, or which is SYNTACTIC. Is that right? SYN, syn, TAC, tac, TIC, tick, parallelism. Or if you want the easier version, it's just anaphora. You remember old Anna, don't you? Anaphora, where the word is repeated from the start of each clause. So we're down, we're beat. So you can refer to it as anaphora or syntactic parallelism. Either way, it's a structural technique, and the whole point is it represents just how defeated the artilleryman thinks they are.
I stared. Strange as it may seem, I had not arrived at this fact. A fact perfectly obvious so soon as he spoke. I had still held a vague hope. Rather, I had kept a lifelong habit of mind. He repeated his words. We're beat. They carried absolute conviction. It's all over, he said. They've lost one. Just one.
Well, this is a little bit of dramatic irony, because we as the reader, we know that it's not just one that's been taken down, is it? Because when we were over at the coast, over at the East Coast, in chapter 17 with the narrator's brother, we saw that more than just one was taken down. So actually, the reader knows more than the artilleryman, more than the narrator, because we've had the benefit of perspective. Now, of course, H.G. Wells knows this full well, and he's done it in this way to involve the reader, but just be aware that this is an example of dramatic irony to engage the reader, and I suppose to make them look a little bit more pessimistic, because they don't know the truth, they don't know the reality like we do as the reader. So I guess it's quite a clever technique, because it makes the story seem even more real and authentic, because we almost want to shout at them and say, you know, there's more to it than you know. That we're now, you know, subconsciously adding to the narrative by wanting to tell them what the reality is, because they don't know. So we're in a position of power because we know the knowledge, and that's a powerful narrative technique to engage the reader. And that's a structural point. Dramatic irony is a structural point.
And they've made their footing good. Cripple the greatest power in the world. They've walked all over us. The death of that one at Weybridge was an accident. And these are only pioneers. They keep on coming. These green stars. I've seen none these 5 or 6 days, but I've no doubt they're falling somewhere every night. Nothing's to be done. We're under. We're beat. I made him no answer. I sat staring before me, trying in vain to devise some countervailing thought. This isn't war, said the artilleryman. It never was a war, any more than there's war between men and ants.
Oh, he's at it again, isn't he, old Herbert Wells? He's at it again. He's comparing humans to ants. It never was a war any more than there's war between men and ants. Ants, that's right, ants. So what you've got there is a simile, but I would actually, if this came up in the exam, I'd be tempted to call it zoomorphism, because it's making humans seem like animals or insects. So I'd be using the zoomorphism there. Now, technically, it's a simile, but, you know, that's a bit vanilla, isn't it? A bit kind of, bit ordinary, a bit basic. I think if you can get to zoomorphism, that is how you're going to really, knock the socks off that examiner.
Suddenly I recalled the night in the observatory. After the 10th shot, they fired no more, at least until the first cylinder came. "How do you know?" said the artilleryman. I explained. He thought. "Something's wrong with the gun," he said. "But what if there is? They'll get it right again. And even if there's a delay, how can it alter the end? It's just men and ants. There's ants that build their cities, live their lives, have wars, revolutions, until the men want them out of the way. And then they go out of the way. That's what we are now. Just ants."
So, he's really stretching this metaphor, this simile now, isn't he? He's really stretching it. I get the impression that H.G. Wells is getting a bit desperate at this point in the novel. I think he feels like he's only got a few chapters left. He wants to really hammer the point home that humans are treating other creatures in a really despicable way. And yes, he means the animals and the sort of insects and the vermin of the world, but he also means how we're treating other civilizations and colonies over in Tasmania and other parts of the less developed world. So this is a very heavy-handed way that H.G. Wells is getting his message across, and I find it a little bit distasteful, to be honest. I find it a little bit distasteful because I like to be able to think for myself, but just in case we didn't know, that it's making it very clear for us now.
"Only..." "Yes," I said. "We're eatable ants." We sat looking at each other. "And what will they do with us?" I said. "Oh, that's what I've been thinking," he said. "That's what I've been thinking. After Weybridge, I went south, thinking. I saw what was up. Most of the people were hard at it, squealing and exciting themselves. But I'm not fond of squealing. I've been in sight of death once or twice. I'm not an ornamental soldier. At the best and worst, death, well, it's just death. And it's the man that keeps on thinking comes through. I saw everyone tracking away south. Says I, food won't last this way, and I turned right back. I went for the Martians like a sparrow goes for a man, all round." He waved a hand to the horizon. "They're starving in heaps, bolting, treading on each other." He saw my face and halted awkwardly. "No doubt. Lots who had money have gone away to France," he said. He seemed to hesitate, whether to apologize, met my eyes and went on. "There's food all about here, canned things in shops, wines and spirits, mineral waters. The water mains and drains are empty. Well, I was telling you what I was thinking."
So he's making a little reference there to, oh dear, it's quite a nice little background there, isn't it? Just to have that underneath, a little bit of jazz piano there with my elbow on the old ebony and ivories. So what he's doing there is he's making reference to people with money going away to France. Well, we know, of course, that's true. We know that Mrs. and Miss Elphinstone and the brother, they've gone across to Ostend, haven't they, in Belgium? So they've gone away that direction because they had the money. And then look at this. There's an ascendetic list of all the different things that the artilleryman and now the narrator can get to. Canned things in shops, wines, spirits, mineral waters, and the water mains and drains are empty. That's how he talks, and the old artilleryman. And so it's showing I suppose he's quite proud of himself. He's quite pleased that he's found such a resourceful place, but it's also quite a relief as far as the narrator's concerned, because now he has access to those resources as well. which is a lovely little thing, isn't it? Lovely. Oh, yes, it's lovely. Oh, yes, it is.
Here's intelligent things, I said. And it seems they want us for food. First they'll smash us up. Ships, machines, guns, cities, all the order and organisation. All that'll go. If we were the size of ants, well, we might pull through. But we're not. It's all too bulky to stop. That's the first certainty, eh? I assented.
He's back at it again with that simile, that extended simile. He's stretching it so tight it's about to snap. He keeps going about ants again. If this extract comes up in the exam, you'll want to talk about how it's an extended simile about dehumanising people down to the level of ants, and you can use that phrase zoomorphism. In fact, you know what you could do? You could combine it for a little combo. You could say it's a zoomorphic simile. How about that? A zoomorphic simile. Oh my goodness. You'll have the examiner absolutely in the palm of your hand. They'll be like putty in your hands. A zoomorphic simile. And that's spelled ZOOMORPHIC. I think that's right. ZOOMORPHIC. That's right. Zoomorphic simile. And don't forget, simile is like a smile, but with extra I in it. So SIMILE. You know.
It is. I thought it out. Very well. Then, next. At present, we're caught as we are wanted. A Martian has only to go a few miles to get a crowd on the run. And I saw one day, out by Wandsworth, picking houses to pieces and routing among the wreckage. But they won't keep on doing that. So soon as they've settled all our guns and ships, and smashed our railways, done all the things they are doing over there, they will begin catching us. Systematic, picking the best ones, and store us in cages and things. That's what they will be doing in a bit. Lord, they haven't begun on us yet. Don't you see that? Not begun, I exclaimed. Not begun. All that's happened so far is through our not having a sense to keep quiet, worrying them with guns and such foolery, and losing our heads and rushing off in crowds to where there wasn't any more safety than where we were. They don't want to bother us yet. They're making their things, making all the things they couldn't bring with them, getting things ready for the rest of their people. Very likely, that's why the cylinders have stopped for a bit, for fear of hitting those who were here. And instead of our rushing about blind on the howl or getting dynamite on the chance of busting them up, we've got to fix ourselves up according to the new state of affairs. That's how I figure it out. It isn't quite according to what a man wants for his species, but it's about what the facts point to. And that's the principle I acted upon. Cities, nations, civilization, progress. It's all over. The game's up. We are beat.
Well, you notice there that there's lots of short, simple sentences and simple clauses. And what that does is it sort of does two things, really. It shows the kind of sort of increases the tension, you know, like the heartbeat of the novel. It kind of gets faster and faster and gets more and more tense as the artilleryman gets a bit more aggressive. But I think it also helps to build the characterisation of the artilleryman as well, because of course we've got a man here who is he's done too much thinking. That's what I've been doing. Thinking down in Wandsworth. That's what he's been doing. He's been thinking too much, and it sort of shows his fragmented state of mind. I've come back again as myself. Hello, everyone. And there he is, as he's driven himself mad, really. And then, what else do I want to say? Hang on one sec. Towards the end of that paragraph, it isn't quite according to what a man wants for his species, but it's about what the facts point to, and that's the principle I acted upon: cities, nations, civilization, progress. There's an asyndetic list of things and human development, human successes, progress. It's all over. Now, what he means there, of course, is that the empire is over. The empire of man is over. The control and dominion of man is over, and he's saying that in order to survive, we have to adapt to our new leaders. And it really makes the reader more empathetic about the kind of thought process that people like the Tasmanians and other third world countries that were developed and colonised by the British Empire had to rationalise. They had to adapt to their new leaders and their new way of life. And that was very, very real and very true for them. They didn't need Martians to prove that point, and they had the British doing it for them. So it's quite horrible when you think about it, but that is what H.G. Wells is really satirising with that one. So there's a really good contextual point to make there.
But if that is so, what is there to live for? The artilleryman looked at me for a moment. There won't be any more blessed concerts for 1,000,000 years or so. There won't be any Royal Academy of Arts, no nice little feeds at restaurants. If it's amusement you're after, I reckon the game is up. If you've got any drawing room manners or a dislike to eating peas with a knife or dropping H's, you'd better chuck 'em away. There ain't no further use.
That's right, chuck 'em away, eh? Chuck 'em all away. Look at that, you've got an asyndetic list of all the things that there won't be anymore in this new world order. Oh dear me, I sound like Alex Jones or David Icke or one of them conspiracy theorists, them cranks. Anyway, so there won't be any Royal Academy of Arts, there's one thing. There won't be no nice little feeds at restaurants, that's another thing. Oh, and that's a full stop, so that's the end of those two things. But anyway, it's an asyndetic list all the same. So get it written down if you wouldn't mind. And then, what have we got here? Oh yeah, if you've got any drawing room manners, or a dislike to eating peas with a knife, or dropping H's. Oh dear, who drops H's round here, eh? Well, he does, look. And I do. So that's that really. More asyndetic lists of things that we'll have to get used to under the new way of working, a new way of living. We're losing the culture. Royal Academy of Arts has gone, restaurants are going, and if you've got to eat your peas with a knife, what he means is a uncouth, ill-mannered way of eating and speaking and living. But he thinks that's the new way, the new world order.
You mean, I mean that men like me are going on with living. For the sake of the breed. I tell ya, I'm grim set on living. And if I'm not mistaken, you'll show what insides you've got, too, before long. We aren't going to be exterminated. And I don't mean to be caught either, and tamed, and fattened, and bred like a thundering ox. Ugh! Fancy those brown creepers.
Well, you'll have spotted this, won't you? But there's a polysyndetic list there. Some polysyndeton, he says. I don't mean to be caught and tamed and fattened and bred like a thundering ox. So all the connectives there, linking it together to make it a dramatic effect. Structural technique, you understand, but a combination of things. He don't want to be called, tamed, fattened, bred like a thundering ox. Can you believe it? I can't Christmas Eve it.
You don't mean to say. I do. I'm going on. Under their feet. Yeah, I've got it planned. I've thought it out. We men are beat. We don't know enough. We've got to learn before we've got a chance. And we've got to live and keep independent while we learn, see? That's what has to be done.
Notice all the short sentences. The very simple clauses combined with the imperatives. We've got to learn before we've got a chance. We've got to live and keep independent while we learn. That's what has to be done. So you've got all these short imperative clauses. Now that's a language and a structure point. The language is the imperatives and the structure is the short and simpleness of it all. It's so simple. We're not going to let the grass grow under our feet. We're going to learn about these Martians and then we're going to bring them down from the inside. Well, that's what he thinks anyway.
I stared, astonished, and stirred profoundly by the man's resolution. Great God, cried I, but you are a man, indeed. And suddenly I gripped his hand. Hey, he said, with his eyes shining. I've thought it out, eh? Go on, I said. Well, those that mean to escape their catching must get ready. I'm getting ready. Mind you, it isn't all of us that are made for wild beasts. And that's what it's got to be. That's why I watched you. I had my doubts. You're slender. I didn't know that it was you, you see, or just how you'd been buried. All these... the sort of people that lived in these houses. All those damn little clerks that used to live down the way. Yeah, they'd be no good. They haven't any spirit in them. No proud dreams, no proud lusts. And the man who hasn't got one, or the other, Lord, what is he but funk and precautions? They just used to skedaddle off to work. I've seen hundreds of them. Bit of breakfast in hand, running wild and shining to catch their little season ticket train, for fear they'd get dismissed if they didn't. Working at businesses they were afraid to take the trouble to understand. Skedaddling back for fear they wouldn't be in time for dinner, keeping indoors after dinner for fear of the back streets, and sleeping with their wives they'd married. Not because they wanted them, but because they had a bit of money that would make for safety in their one little miserable skedaddle through the world. Lives insured and a bit invested for fear of accidents, and on Sundays, fear of the hereafter. As if hell was built for rabbits. Well, the Martians will just be a godsend to these. Nice roomy cages, fattening food, careful breeding, no worry. After a week or so chasing the fields and lands on empty stomachs, they'll come and be caught cheerful. They'll be quite glad after a bit. They'll wonder what people did before there were Martians to take care of them. And the bar loafers and mashers and singers. Oh, I can imagine them. I can imagine them, he said, with a sort of sombre gratification. There'll be any amount of sentiment and religion and loose among them.
Oh, these people, these stupid people, they'll be glad to be caught by the Martians and fattened up and bred in their big cages. Oh, he's making a big social comment now, isn't he, H.G. Wells? He's saying that all these useless people, they're an absolute godsend to the Martians because they'll throw themselves willingly to be caught. But not him, you see, the artilleryman, he's different. And he thinks that the narrator's different too, because he's not going to wait around to be caught either. He's got some funk about him. He's got some bravery. He's got some thoughts in his head, some dreams and some lust, which makes him have a bit of pride and a bit of dignity. And he's not willing to let himself be caught and controlled by the Martians, you see. So that's what this is, a bit of social commentary. That's what I'd write down in the margin if I had half a mind. I'd write down social commentary by H.G. Wells. He's making fun of everyday people who get on their trains to go to work, people who are frightened to be late for work in case they get in trouble, people who are frightened of their wives and frightened of everything because just in case everything isn't just perfect. Well, that's how it was in the Victorian days, you see, and in a way, isn't that how it is now? That's food for thought, isn't it, eh? And also, people will worry and not worry, they'll wonder what life was like before the Martians looked after them. They'll wonder what life was like. Well, won't we wonder what life was like before lockdown? At this rate, I've almost forgotten what it's like to go to work and actually see people and actually have to be like a sane human being. I mean, here I am locked in my little room, talking to the walls with a microphone. Oh my word, and you're telling me this is sane? Oh, I don't think so.
There's hundreds of things I saw with my eyes that I've only begun to see clearly these last few days. There's lots will take things as they are, fat and stupid. And lots will be worried by a sort of feeling that it's all wrong and that they ought to be doing something. Now, whenever things are so that a lot of people feel they ought to be doing something, the weak and those who go weak with a lot of complicated thinking always make for a sort of do-nothing religion, very pious and superior, and submit to persecution and the will of the Lord.
Well, we've met someone who comes under that description, haven't we? Eh? Who have we met that sounds a bit like that? Someone who's a bit pious, a bit superior, but who'll submit to the will of the Lord. Eh? He was raving and frothing at the mouth with his revelations, quotations, do you remember? That's him, it was the curate, wasn't it? He was the sort of person that the artilleryman thinks is a complete waste of space in these situations because he's not prepared to think for himself. He's just prepared to let that God's will take effect, you see. So what this is doing is building up that sense of character foil between the artilleryman and the curate. Compare these fairly minor characters, but they give us a sense of opinion and a different perspective. So these are foils against each other. So the artilleryman is foiled against the curate, and it's well worth comparing those characters and the way they speak and the things they talk about.
Very likely you've seen the same thing. It's energy in a gale of funk and turned clean inside out. These cages will be full of psalms and hymns and piety, and those of less simple sort will work in a bit of, what is it, eroticism?
Well, you'd have spotted some polysyndeton there and no mistake, won't you? These cages will be full of psalms and hymns and piety. There's three things joined by connective. It's polysyndetic list, and it just shows the way in which he feels that for these people they'll fill their silly little lives with meaningless babbling and waffling and all the rest of it. So that's polysyndeton. I can't even say it. Polysyndeton to reinforce just how meaningless and endless it all is. Just like this podcast. And here I am being paid to make these podcasts. Can you believe it? I can't believe it. I can't believe it. Now, he says so at the end of this little sentence here, the end of this paragraph. And those of a less simple sort will work in a bit of, what is it? Eroticism. Now, this is a strange thing indeed here, because does he mean eroticism? Does he know what eroticism is? I wonder if he means neuroticism. Neuroticism, you know, with a T in the middle. Neurotic, when people get panicked and anxious and anxiety, it's neurotic. That would make more sense, but let's follow it through. Maybe he does mean eroticism. I mean, blimey, let's see what he does go on to say the Martians will make pets of them, make them do tricks. Who knows? Get sentimental over them. I mean, I don't know, does that link to eroticism? I don't really want to go too far down that avenue, to be honest with you. I mean, I'll leave it up to you to think about it. I think it's just showing his ignorance. I think he means neuroticism, and I think it's just his manner of speech. He's not a clever man, but he's an everyday, what we call sometimes a barroom philosopher. Someone who'll sit in the pub and kind of just philosophise about the world. And that's kind of what he is. He's not a clever man. He's not a learned academic like the narrator, but he has his thoughts and he has his feelings. And in fact, the narrator is seduced by that. Not seduced in an eroticism sort of way, if you'll pardon the pun, but he's drawn in by that sort of character. And I think that's an important characterisation point to make, that even a learned academic like our narrator, he's not a stupid man, but he's drawn in by the artilleryman's what's the word, spunk, I suppose you'd say, that sort of vigour and kind of call to action, that sort of feeling that you can want to get up and do something. And that's quite appealing to the narrator, because of course there is no place for the academic anymore. There's no room for clever thoughts. This is about a time of action and survival.
He paused. Very likely, these Martians will make pets of some of them. Train them to do tricks. Who knows? Get sentimental over the pet boy who grew up and had to be killed. And some, maybe, they were trained to hunt us. No, I cried. That's impossible. No human being. What's the good of going on with such lies? Said the artilleryman. There's men that would do it cheerful. What nonsense to pretend there isn't.
Well, this is bleak indeed, isn't it? Very bleak. And this is about not so much the Martians themselves, but about the real horror. The real horror is always the people, isn't it? The people left behind. It's just like in these apocalypse films and these zombie things, you know, The Walking Dead and all this. It's not really the zombies or the monsters that are the frightening thing. It's the people. It's the other people. Do you see that? So you've got to watch out for. And here he's saying that maybe the Martians will train other humans to hunt other humans. And that's a real horror. It's too much for the narrator to comprehend and accept. But of course, you know, who's to say that the artilleryman is not correct in his thinking? It sounds reasonable. So you've got to look at this as it's sort of, H.G. Wells is using the artilleryman here as a device. This is where I'd write this down. This is getting good here. I can feel it in my bones. It's getting good, right? So, sorry about that. I got interrupted there by my little girl. She came through the door, told me lunch was ready, and I had to stop the recording. So I'm going to go for my lunch in a second, but I'll just make this last point before I leave you. And I'll come back again. You won't notice a thing. I'll just edit it all together and you'll feel like I've never been away. It'll be perfect. Anyway, what was I saying? It was a really good point I was going to make. Oh, yeah. That H.G. Wells is using the artilleryman, right, as a narrative device to stretch out the ideas of what life could be like under the Martians. Now, he doesn't need to show us what life would be like under the Martians, but he can just visualize it through the artilleryman. So his character is actually very important because it gives us a version of the future which may well be true, but we'll never get to see it. So he kind of gives us a glimpse of something without having to go to all the effort of creating all them pages and all them words and all the plot and all that, you know, malarkey. He can get away with all that and just give us one man's opinion. But it kind of achieves the same thing. It's an efficient way of giving us an alternative view, and it's a very bleak one, you see, very frightening one. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, rewind it, have a little listen again, and see if it makes more sense a second time round. So he's using the character of the artilleryman as a narrative device to visualise what life will be like under the Martians. Now, I'm going to go and have myself some lunch. I wonder what I'm going to have. I made some bread the other day. I might have some bread, maybe a little bit of cheese. I could have what the narrator had. I could have a bit of mutton. Mind you, I ain't got any mutton, so I can't have that. A bit of bread. I don't know if I've got any beer. probably best not having it in the middle of the day. Otherwise, this afternoon's podcast will be a funny old thing indeed, won't it? So I better not. I better just have a cup of tea, eh? Right, I'm going to go for my lunch, and I'll see you in a few seconds' time. Bye.
And I succumbed to his conviction. "If they come after me," he said, "Lord, if they come after me," and subsided into a grim meditation. I sat, contemplating these things. I could find nothing to bring against this man's reasoning. In the days before the invasion, no one would have questioned my intellectual superiority to his. I, a professed and recognized writer on philosophical themes, and he, a common soldier. And yet he had already formulated a situation that I had scarcely realized.
So there we have it, you see. We've got the character foil of the narrator and the artilleryman. And he tells us in black and white, as clear as you like on the page there, that he has intellectual superiority to a common soldier, and yet this situation has levelled the playing field. It's a humbling leveller of the playing field, and now this common soldier with his faults and his ideas are actually just as valid as the narrators. Well, there you are. I'm back from my lunch. I've had 18 pints of lager, and now I'm ready to carry on with the podcast. I had a little bit of bread and cheese as well. Watched a little bit of Race Across the World on the iPlayer there. I quite enjoying that on the BBC iPlayer. And now I'm back with the War with the Worlds podcast. So let's see if we can get through this chapter. It's taken a bit of doing this chapter, but let's see if we can get to the end of the Man on Putney Hill.
"What are you doing?" I said presently. "What plans have you made?" He hesitated. "Well, it's like this," he said. "What have we to do? We have to invent a sort of life where men can live and breed and be sufficiently secure to bring their children up. Yeah, wait a bit, I'll make it clearer what I think ought to be done. The tame ones will go like all the tame beasts. In a few generations, they'll be big, beautiful, rich-blooded, stupid, rubbish. The risk is that who we keep wild will go savage, degenerate into a sort of big, savage rat."
It is a problem, isn't it? That we might all turn into big savage rats. Now, this is another sort of example of zoomorphism from H.G. Wells. He was using the artilleryman as a mouthpiece, of course, but really, at the end of the day, it's zoomorphism, and he's saying that we might degenerate into these rats, these underground creatures that'll go wild and savage. So, I mean, he's making quite a big humanitarian point, really, about the tame ones, the ones who will be caught by the Martians, the ones who don't form part of the resistance, will be rich-blooded, stupid and rubbish. They'll be overfed, they'll be fattened up for breeding and for eating by the Martians. And it's sort of a little bit, if we wanted to look at it like this, a kind of social critique, and that's spelled CRITIQUE, critique, and sort of satirising the wealth in society, and making out that actually sometimes the richest, the rich-blooded, are often the most stupid. And that's kind of this is a socialist point, and this is, we'll get onto this when we look at we look at Inspector Calls as well, and you look at what Mr. Burning says about cranks like H.G. Wells, these socialist cranks. Well, that's what you've got here. He is a socialist. He's sort of saying that you don't have to be rich to have the most to offer. In fact, sometimes those with the least money have more to offer society than those who are rich. And we've seen that a little bit in this book so far with the likes of Mrs. Elphinstone. Not Miss Elphinstone, bear in mind, she was a handy pair of hands to have around, but Mrs. Elphinstone was absolutely useless, really. The curate, absolutely useless. And what's he called? I forgot his name now. Was it a doctor or a clerk? No, a judge maybe. One of the sort of judicial people that died by the side of the road, and no one was bothered at the crossroads of the Great North Road with his brother. I can't remember his name now. Anyway, it was an example there of where it didn't matter because no one was bothered. No one bothered, because even though he was had status when in normal times, these are not normal times now, and no one gave a monkey's ankle about it because he had nothing to offer society. So you probably want to write that down as a thematic point, because he's trying to make the point that wealth does not bring everything with it. It's sort of more about the individual, and yet wealth can make people self-centered and not the most interested in looking after society. And here the artilleryman is trying to look after society. Now, he's not the most sane, is he? He's clearly a little bit unhinged, but he has nothing to offer apart from his physical strength and his ideas.
You see? How I mean to live is underground. I've been thinking about the drains. Of course, but those who don't know drains think horrible things. But under this London are miles and miles, hundreds of miles. And a few days' rain, and London empty will leave them sweet and clean. The main drains are big enough and airy enough for anyone.
Delicious. Living down in the sweet, sweet drains. Oh, doesn't that sound absolutely idyllic? Oh, I think so. Well, I'm going to give you a new technique now. And you see all these dashes, these hyphens that he uses here, that H.G. Wells uses. Now, this is to show, of course, that the artilleryman keeps having these broken thoughts. He keeps stopping halfway through his sentences like that, you see. And what it does is, of course, it shows his broken mind. It shows his lack of clarity of thought. In spite of all his confidence and bravado, he actually can't think straight. Now, you could make a comment about his broken thoughts and his hyphens, and if you wanted to get a bit more technical, you could say that he uses what's called hesitations and self-repairs. So hesitations are obvious, a little pause, but self-repairs sorry about that. Stanley just came in to tell me a little fun fact he'd been learning down in home school, that the invented the bacon, don't you? It was that only them Romans, they invented bacon. Can you believe that? So he thought he'd come and tell me all about it. Anyway, where were we? Oh yeah, the hesitations, the self-repairs. That's right. So with a self-repair, it just means when you stop and you restart your sentence and correct yourself, and that's kind of what he's doing there. Now, that's all well and good. That's kind of sort of chocolate chip kind of. It's not vanilla, it's chocolate chip. But if you want to go, mint choc chip, or you want to go rum and raisin, or you want to go, I don't know. I mean, if you want to go top of the shop and go, I don't know, what's the best flavour of ice cream? What's the most fancy flavour? Neapolitan? Let's go Neapolitan. 3 different flavours. That's quite nice, isn't it? Let's go for that. If you want to go for the top of the shop, high level, you're going to write down, in nice clear writing, a word called Tmesis. Now I'm going to spell it for you. I-T, get it? Now I'm going to spell it for you properly, because it's a new word, and it's spelled T-M-E-S-I-S. And if you want it phonetically, well, good luck, because I'm not sure if I know it all. I should do, because I'm the artilleryman, so I know all the phonetic alphabet, but I'll give it a go. Tango, margarine, elephant, that's right, isn't it? Sierra, indigo, Sierra, that's about right, isn't it? Yeah, Tmesis, anyway, that's how you write it down. Now, what it means is when you sort of technically, what it means is when you have a word and you break up that word with another word in the middle, like, it's abso-flippin'-lutely fan-flippin'-tastic. That's 2 examples of Temesis for you there. If you want them, you're welcome. But I think in this case you could use that because he breaks up his own clauses and puts other clauses in the middle. Now, it's not, it's not textbook Temesis, don't get me wrong, but I think in the exam you'd be able to get away with it if this were to come up in the exam, and it might well do, because it's quite an important section about humanity and philosophy. So there you go, Temesis, and that is a language point.
In their cellars, vaults, stores, from which bolt-in passages may be made to the drains, in the railway tunnels and the subways. Eh? You begin to see? And we form a band, able-bodied, clean-minded men. We're not going to pick up any rubbish that drifts in. Weaklings go out again. And you meant me to go? Well, I parleyed, didn't I? We won't quarrel about that. Go on. Those who stop obey orders. Able-bodied, clean-minded women we want also. Mothers and teachers. No lackadaisical ladies. No blasted rolling eyes. Can't have any weak or silly. Life is real again. And the useless, cumbersome, mischievous have to die. They ought to die.
Okay, so what we've got here are some asyndetic lists. You've got cellars, vaults, stores, from which bolting passages may be made to the drains. So you've got these asyndetic lists of all the things he's been thinking about, all the ways in which they're going to live under the ground. Now, bear in mind, here's a little fun contextual fact for you, if you want it, that H.G. Wells, well, he wrote a book about people who lived under the ground, didn't he? Do you remember? Yeah, he wrote a book called The Time Machine. The Time Machine, and if you haven't read it, you should probably have a little look at it, because it has some quite interesting parallels with War of the Worlds, and you'd be well advised to have a little look and, enrich yourselves, especially now if you're reading this in 2020, in May. Well, you'll be in lockdown, and of course you might have a little bit of time to read more widely, fill your souls, fill your hearts with literature, you see. That's what you should be doing. Anyway, not according to artillery. He thinks that books and all this lackadaisical nonsense is for losers. It's a waste of time. So he says that he wants able-bodied, clean-minded men, and he wants able-bodied, clean-minded women. He wants some mothers and teachers. Very practical. He wants people to have a role in society. He's trying to rebuild a new society. And this is the book at its most heavily socialist. It's saying, look, we need to start again and rebuild society. So H.G. Wells is questioning what that means. What does it mean if we have to start again? If you are at this point in the lockdown, you're thinking, well, what is life like? What do we actually need? And it does make you question the things you get from the shops, the food that you buy, the way in which we actually work and the way in which we learn. It does make you reevaluate things. And of course, that's the case here in a far more intense way when the Martians take hold. And then, I think before I just stop there, there's a couple more things to say. Oh yeah, that's right. A little bit of Paulie Cinderton. Life is real again. We're about halfway down the page on 157. Where have we gone? I lost it. Oh yeah. The useless and cumbersome and mischievous have to die. Polly Cinderton there. Polly put the kettle on, Polly put the kettle on, Polly put the kettle on, we'll all have tea. Polly Cinderton, there we are. So that's it. Useless and cumbersome and mischievous have to die. They ought to die. They ought to be willing to die. Oh, look at that, look. It's got the word die at the end of each damn clauses. That's nice, isn't it? Well, there's a name for that, and it's called epistrophe. Like apostrophe, but epistrophe. Shall I spell it for you? Of course I will. Don't you worry about that. EPISTROPHE. D-I-S-C-O. No, E-P-I-S-T-R-O-P-H-E. Epistrophe, like apostrophe, but with an E at the beginning and that about that. So that's it. Epistrophe. Now it just means the same word at the end of the sentence on a couple of times. In this case, it's 3 times. So that's nice. What's the point of it? Well, I suppose it emphasises the word, doesn't it? Makes us think about death, makes us think about the people who deserve to die. He's got quite a severe vision for the new world, hasn't he, this chap? He's quite a dangerous man to have in charge as, leading the new world. He thinks that the mischievous, the cumbersome and the useless have to die, and they ought to be willing to die, because he thinks it's a disloyalty, after all, to live and taint the race. Oh, my word. I mean, this is a little bit about eugenics. If you want to delve into that dark and seedy area of eugenics, of sort of breeding a better race and wheeling out the runts of the litter. That's sort of what he's saying here, and it's a bit frightening and a little bit prophetic, because you know what, who came along in the early part of the 20th century, Adolf, he came along with his ideas about eugenics, didn't he? Wanted to build a better world full of better people, and you know where that got us. So, quite prophetic. But, of course, Adolf Hitler wasn't the only one. There were many, many world leaders who wanted to purify the human race. And that's sort of what H.G. Wells is satirising here. Now, don't get me wrong, you mustn't think that H.G. Wells believes this, not for 1 second. He's shining a light on this. He's holding up a mirror and saying, look how stupid this is. He's not saying this is how we should live our lives, but he is saying this is how people think. And he's making us as a reader question that. And that's how this is a socialist novel, making us think about other people. So, that's a thematic point, really. It's not really so much language or structure, although the polysynthesis and the epistrophe, they're both structural points. And that's probably it, really. Let's push on, shall we? Otherwise, we'll just keep nattering all day long.
They ought to be willing to die. It's a sort of disloyalty, after all, to live and taint the race. And they can't be happy. Moreover, dying's none so dreadful. It's the funking makes it bad. And in all those places we shall gather. Our district will be London. And we may even be able to keep a watch and run about in the open when the Martians keep away. Play cricket, perhaps. That's how we shall save the race, eh? It's a possible thing. But saving the race, nothing in itself. As I say, that's only being rats. It's saving our knowledge, and adding to it is the thing. There, men like you come in. There's books, there's models. We must make great safe places down deep, and get all the books we can. Not novels or poetry swipes, but ideas, science books. That's where men like you come in.
That's right. Not poems, not novels. What absolute drivel, what absolute rubbish. We don't want none of that. We want non-fiction, we want science books, real facts and figures. That's what we want. We want to preserve the integrity of the human race. Now, of course, H.G. Wells is making fun, isn't he? It's a parody, it's a satire, because, of course, this is a novel, this is a work of fiction. So you can see that H.G. Wells doesn't really believe that. He's just doing it because this is how people would react, this is how people would think. I mean, you don't have to go on the old YouTube and get on the wrong side of YouTube and get on these conspiracy theories. Oh my word, there are people like the artilleryman. In fact, you know what? There are those survivalists in certain parts of America who already are living underground like rats, with all their bunkers and all their guns and arsenals and all sorts of things, waiting for the second New World Order. Anyway, so this is very accurate portrayal and characterisation of how people do think, but it's satire.
We must go to the British Museum and pick all those books through. Especially we must keep our science, learn more, We must watch these Martians. Some of us must go as spies. When it's all working, perhaps I will. Get caught, I mean. And the great thing is, we must leave the Martians alone. We mustn't even steal. If we get in their way, we clear out. We must show them we mean no harm. Yes, I know. But they're intelligent things. They won't hunt us down if they have all they want and think we're just harmless vermin.
There he goes again, H.G. Wells, using zoomorphism to reduce and dehumanise the human race just to being harmless vermin. And of course, the real poignant point here is that to some places in the world, that I'm going back to the poor Tasmanians again, in the Black War, in a way that they were seen as savages. They were seen as vermin. They weren't seen as being really human. Can you believe it? They were seen as like a lesser race, a lesser species that needed help by the Western civilization to bring them up to speed, up to the almost the 20th century, up to the 19th century as it was then in the Black War. So it's sort of funny, isn't it? But then when you think about the real world politics, it's actually very poignant, very sad. So definitely want to make a contextual point there, but also the language point of zoomorphism as well. I do apologise if you can hear all this pippy pippy poppy. It's just teams doing more nutting.
The artilleryman paused and laid a brown hand upon my arm. After all, it may not be so much we may have to learn before. Well, just imagine this. 4 or 5 of their fighting machines suddenly starting off, heat rays, right and left, and not a Martian in them. Not a Martian in them, but men who have learnt the way how. It may be in my time, even those men. Fancy having one of them lovely things, with its heat ray, wide and free. Fancy having it in control. What would it matter if you smashed to smithereens at the end of the run after a bust like that? I reckon the Martians will open their beautiful eyes. And you see them, man. And you see them hurrying, puffing and blowing and hooting their other mechanical affairs. Something out of gear in every case. Swish, bang, rattle, swish. Just as they are fumbling over, swish, comes the heat ray, and behold, a man has come back to his own.
Well, this is one of them sections that it just has a feeling about it that might come up in the exam. It's a really important part of the book, and I think if I were an examiner, I might choose this as a less obvious section to pick. Now let's just have a little look through and go through this. Now, it uses a fair bit of anaphora here, which is where you repeat a word at the start of each, or a phrase at the start of each sentence. So, not a Martian in them, not a Martian in them. I mean, that's just repetition, isn't it? But you can also refer to it as anaphora. A-N-A-P-H-O-R-A. I won't do it phonetically because I can't remember all the letters. So let's push on a little bit further. Yes, fancy having one of them lovely things with its heat ray wide and free. Fancy having it in control. Well, that word fancy is anaphora, and that's a structural technique. The heat ray wide and free, that phrase wide and free, is an example of hendiadys, because they both mean the same thing, but they combine together to make this a bigger sense of freedom. If you had a heat ray in your hand, it'd be a powerful person, wouldn't you? Wide and free, that's hendiadys. What would it make if you smashed to smithereens at the end of the run after a bust like that? Can't you see them hurrying, puffing and blowing and hooting to their other mechanical affairs? So you've got here a few things, really. You've got these dynamic verbs: hurrying, puffing, blowing, hooting. you've got an you've got a polysyndetic list, puffing and blowing and hooting to their other mechanical affairs. So you've got polysyndetic list, or polysyndeton if you prefer, and that just sort of increases that sense of how chaotic it would be if a human got into one of them fighting machines and ran amok. And then you've got a little bit of onomatopoeia next. Look, that's a nice treat for us, isn't it? And swish, bang, rattle, swish. It's an asyndetic list of onomatopoeic verbs. Not verbs. Nouns, I suppose they are, aren't they? Just kind of sounds. So onomatopoeic sounds. Swish, bang, rattle, swish. And just as they're fumbling over it, swish comes the heat ray, and behold, man has come back to his own. So what he's talking about there is an uprising from the resistance of getting in one of them or 4 or 5 machines and running amok and using their own technology against them. So this is warfare. So you can see why the book is called War of the Worlds, because the artilleryman is thinking long term about the kind of strategy that you need to have to survive and fight a long term war against them by devising an underground resistance group. Have you ever seen Terminator? Have you? Hey, the Terminator. Oh, they're brilliant, those Terminator films. Yes, that's the resistance against the machines. Oh, it's brilliant. Arnold Schwarzenegger. Oh, he's very good in it, Very good. Have a look at them if you can. Mind you, they're probably 18s, aren't they? I don't know. Mind you, I'm sure you're watching other things that are probably unsuitable. But if you want to have a little look, it's a good example of. I mean, there would be no Terminator films or the whole franchise really without War of the Worlds. It's prophetic stuff. It's pioneering stuff. It's powerful.
For a while, the imaginative daring of the artilleryman and the tone of assurance and courage he assumed completely dominated my mind. I believed unhesitatingly, both in his forecast of human destiny and in the practicability of his astonishing scheme. And the reader who thinks me susceptible and foolish must contrast his position, reading steadily with all his thoughts about his subject, and mine, crouching fearfully in the bushes and listening, distracted by apprehension. We talked in this manner through the early morning time, and later crept out of the bushes, and after scanning the sky for Martians, hurried precipitately to the house on Putney Hill, where he had made his lair. It was the coal cellar of the place, and when I saw the work he had spent a week upon, it was a burrow scarcely 10 yards long, which he designed to reach the main drain on Putney Hill. I had my first inkling of the gulf between his dreams and his powers. Such a hole I could have dug in a day.
Aha, so here we are. Now this is a structural point. You see what's happened here is H.G. Wells has sequenced this part of the chapter to fill our minds with all the artilleryman's radical ideas and really build up the sense of a resistance and the opportunities and the optimism. And then look at this, he undermines it by realising that when he gets back to the house, he's only managed to dig a tiny little burrow to start his tunnel, scarcely 10 yards long. Well, I mean, it's quite funny really, isn't it? So all that talk, all that bravado, and actually all he's managed to do is dig a 10-yard little trench. So there's a name for that, of course. Always a name for it, isn't there? And the name for that is bathos. Do forgive me. Bathos. Like a bath. Like a bath that you get into, a nice warm bath. But with OS on the end. Bathos. That's it. Did you get the spelling of that one? So it's Bravo, Alpha, Tango, Helicopter, maybe, Orange, probably not Orange, and Sugar Plum, that's S, isn't it? That's right. that's bathos. Anyway, that's a structural technique, I suppose, because he sequenced the events to make the sort of undermining, laughable point at the end after such a big build-up, and then we get this anticlimax. So it's a structural point, but a very powerful one, because so many people, I mean, you know these people, even now, that are all talk, and nothing else. Just all talk. They can talk the talk, but can they walk the walk? Well, the artilleryman cannot walk the walk because he's just dug a tiny little trench, something that the narrator could have dug himself in just one day. And he's not even a particularly strong physical man. As he admits, he's just a philosophical writer. But the artilleryman, he's a man of action, he's a soldier. He should have got further than 10 yards, shouldn't he?
But I believed in him sufficiently to work with him all that morning until past midday at his digging. We had a garden barrow and shot the earth we removed against the kitchen range. We refreshed ourselves with a tin of mock turtle soup and wine from the neighbouring pantry. I found a curious relief from the aching strangeness of the world in this steady labour. As we worked, I turned his project over in my mind, and presently objections and doubts began to arise. But I worked there all morning. So glad was I to find myself with a purpose again. After working an hour, I began to speculate on the distance one had to go before the cloaca was reached. The chances we had of missing it altogether.
I just save you the trouble of searching cloaca. Just means the sewer, the drain, the big drain pipe where all the waste and excrement from all the toilets gets flushed away down, all the excreta. Oh dear, it might be dirt to you, but it's bread and butter to a plumber, isn't it? Bread and butter. Oh, my goodness me, they wouldn't eat it like bread and butter, but it's their living, isn't it? In a cloaca.
My immediate trouble was why we should dig this long tunnel when it was possible to get into the drain at once down one of the manholes and work back to the house. It seemed to me, too, that the house was inconveniently chosen and required a needless length of tunnel. And just as I was beginning to face these things, the artilleryman stopped digging and looked at me. "We are working well," he said. He put down his spade. "Let us knock off a bit," he said. "I think it's time we reconnoitred from the roof of the house." I was for going on, and after a little hesitation, he resumed his spade. And then suddenly, I was struck by a thought. I stopped, and so did he at once. "Why were you walking about the common," I said, "instead of being here?" "It's taken in the ear," he said. "I was coming back. It's safer by night." "But the work?" One can't always work," he said. And in a flash, I saw the man plain. He hesitated, holding his spade. "We ought to reconnoitre, now," he said, "because if any come near, they may hear the spades and drop upon us unawares." I was no longer disposed to object. We went together to the roof and stood on a ladder, peeping out of the roof door. No Martians were to be seen, and we ventured out on the tiles and slipped down under the shelter, under the parapet. From this position, a shrubbery hid the greater portion of Putney, but we could see the river below, a bubbly mass of red weed, and the low parts of Lambeth flooded and red. The red creeper swarmed up the trees about the old palace, and their branches stretched gaunt and dead, and set with shriveled leaves from amid its clusters. It was strange how entirely dependent both these things were upon flowing water for their propagation. About us, neither had gained a footing. Laburnums, pink maize, snowballs, and trees of arbor vitae rose out of laurels and hydrangeas, green and brilliant into the sunlight. Beyond Kensington, dense smoke was rising. That and a blue haze hid the northward hills.
I keep saying this, but I'll say it again. please, please, please have a map as you read through this section of the book. Have it all the time next to you, a good old trusty map. I've bought an Ordnance Survey map of southwest London, including Surrey, and I can see all the little roads and paths, and I can see all the way that the narrator moves towards London. And here you can see that they're looking down the river in Putney. You can see the low parts of Lambeth, which means they're getting nearer, going further north. And then you've got, of course, over the river, you've got Kensington, South Kensington. If you've ever been to the Science Museum and the Victoria and Albert, the Natural History Museum, then you've been to South Kensington. The Royal Albert Hall, of course, is down there as well, and also Hyde Park, the bottom sort of tip of Hyde Park there as well. So that's South Kensington. We're getting nearer and nearer to the centre of London. Do you know where the centre of London is, by the way? Where the maps sort of pick out as the centre point of London. I'll give you a little fun fact. They actually mark the centre of London as Charing Cross. Charing Cross, that's the sort of just near Trafalgar Square, and that's where they sort of typify as being the absolute epicentre of London. And do you know the reason why? Of course you don't. Well, let me tell you. It's because I think it was Edward I, carried the crosses down for his wife Eleanor, all the way down England, all the way down sort of what is now the Great North Road, and finished up at the Charing Cross in London, or it's become known as the Charing Cross, named after the cross that he gave for his dead wife Eleanor. I think it was Edward I, maybe Edward II. I might have got that wrong, but there you go. You can still see some of them if you travel down or northward or southward along the sort of backbone of the country. You'll come across in certain towns the old crosses that Edward put there for his wife. There you go. You're welcome. Little fun history fact for you there.
The artilleryman began to tell me of the sort of people who still remained in London. "One night last week," he said, "some fools got the electric light in order, and there was all Regent Street and the circus ablaze, crowded with painted and ragged drunkards, men and women, dancing and shouting till dawn."
Oh dear. Sounds like a Saturday night. If you go down to London, well, not these days, not during lockdown, of course, but any other time, you get yourself down Piccadilly Circus, like Bedlam. Anyway, let's talk about the language and the structure, because I know that's what you're on the edge of your seats all wanting to hear about. Well, you've got a little bit of henditis. In fact, first of all, let's talk about the asyndetic lists. You've got ragged drunkards, men and women, dancing and shouting till dawn. Okay, so there you've got an asyndetic list. You've got henditis, dancing and shouting till dawn. Same thing, really. All just means drunken behaviour, noisy, chaotic behaviour, and of course that's very stupid and dangerous when there are Martians around. So H.G. was using those techniques to sort of emphasise the chaos and uncontrollable nature of some people. Some people, eh? It's like in the time of lockdown, you still get some people meeting up and not obeying social distancing. I mean, you just couldn't, you wouldn't believe it, would you? When people write about this in years to come, oh my word, you mark my words.
The man who was there told me. And as the day came, they became aware of a fighting machine standing near the Langham and looking down at them. Heaven knows how long he had been there. Must have given some sort of nasty turn. He came down the road towards them, picked them up. Nearly 100, too drunk or frightened to run away. Grotesque gleam of a time no history will ever fully describe. From that, in answer to my questions, he came round to his grandiose plans again. He grew enthusiastic. He talked so eloquently of the possibility of capturing a fighting machine that I more than half believed him again. But now that I was beginning to understand something of his quality, I could divine the stress he laid on doing nothing precipitately. And I noted that now there was no question that he personally was to capture and fight the great machine.
Sorry about that. Sorry, I got a bit carried away, on the old jingle jangle. Oh, yes. Anyway, bit more bathos for you there, Bathos. Because there we realise that this man is not the man he thinks he is. He's just a bit of a chancer, isn't he? A bit of a talker, but actually he's not really up to much. So we've got the bathos there, the big build up, and then the anticlimax. He himself will not, if he can't even dig a trench or a tunnel to get into the drains, what chance has he got of getting into one of the fighter machines and taking control of the heat ray? Absolutely none. No chance at all.
After a time, we went down to the cellar. Neither of us seemed disposed to resume digging, and when he suggested a meal, I was nothing loath. He became suddenly very generous, and when we had eaten, he went away and returned with some excellent cigars. We lit these, and his optimism glowed. He was inclined to regard my coming as a great occasion. "There's some champagne in the cellar," he said. "We can dig better on this Thameside Burgundy," said I. "No," said he. "I am host today. Champagne! Great God! We've a heavy enough task before us. Let us take the risk and gather strength while we may. Look at these blistered hands."
And there we have it, look. He's more interested in getting drunk on champagne and living the good life than actually doing any real work. He's all talk and no action, all work and no play. Oh no, that's something different. That's from The Shining. No, so he's all talk and no action, and this is bathos from H.G. Wells. All the big build-up, all the climactic tension, and then now this big anticlimax as we realise that this man is just like everybody else. He just wants to get smashed on champagne and just, live for the moment, and he really isn't a leader for the future at all. So this all comes under characterisation, I suppose. Not really language. You could say it's structural because it's sequenced in such a way that delivers the anticlimax. So I guess it's structural point, but it's also thematic of the fact that people are just weak and that, they really are, no matter how you look at it, they're all struggling, whether they're sat there getting drunk or they're in Piccadilly Circus getting drunk. It makes no difference because ultimately they're all going to be brown bread when the Martians come.
And pursuant to this idea of a holiday, he insisted upon playing cards after we had eaten. He taught me euchre, and after dividing London between us, I taking the northern side and he the southern, we played for parish points. Grotesque and foolish as this will seem to the sober reader, it was absolutely true. And, what is more remarkable, I found the card game and several others we played extremely interesting.
And that's the truth, isn't it? That, we as human beings, we're very easily distracted, aren't we? Of course we are. And the narrator, as much as a rational, logic-minded man as he is, he's easily distracted. And why not? Why not sit and play a few card games when you know that, the future's looking pretty bleak? Why not? Why not join a lockdown orchestra and start playing Florence and the Machine when you should be doing some work? Why not, I say, why not?
Strange mind of man, that with our species upon the edge of extermination or appalling degradation, with no clear prospect before us but the chance of a horrible death, we could sit following the chance of this painted pasteboard and playing the joker with vivid delight. Afterwards he taught me poker, and I beat him at 3 tough chess games. When dark came, we decided to take the risk and lit a lamp. After an interminable string of games, we supped, and the artilleryman finished the champagne. We went on smoking the cigars. He was no longer the energetic regenerator of his species I had encountered in the morning. He was still optimistic, but it was a less kinetic, a more thoughtful optimism. I remember he wound up with my health, proposed in a speech of small variety, and considerable intermittence. I took a cigar and went upstairs to look at the lights of which he had spoken, that blazed so greenly along the Highgate hills. At first I stared unintelligently across the London Valley. The northern hills were shrouded in darkness. The fires near Kensington glowed redly, and now and then an orange-red tongue of flame flashed up and vanished in the deep blue night. All the rest of London was black. Then, nearer, I perceived a strange light, a pale, violet, purple fluorescent glow, quivering under the night breeze.
Oh, I almost missed it there. It mentions the tongue of flame flashed up. Flashed up? Flashed up. Yeah, flashed up. That's right, flashed up. The tongue of flame. Personification, isn't it? Bit of language there. Personification, personifying the fire. A little tongue of flame flashing up and vanishing in the deep blue night. That was my little Martian impression, little Martian tongue there going flicking up into the night sky. And yeah, that's it. Language technique, personification. That's probably it for that little bit there. Oh, I mean, maybe just a little bit of. Oh, sorry about that. I do beg your pardon. Could refer to the use of colour here as well. Of course, the Kensington glowed redly. An orange-red tongue of flame, ooh, the deep blue night, the black of London, the pale violet-purple fluorescent glow, oh, and then the red weed. So you've got all these colours, and it's sort of, again, I think it's to make it seem very vivid, very unnatural, very surreal, a strange landscape as he looks across London and sees all these different colours. Doesn't feel like the London he knows, doesn't feel like the earth he knows. It feels very strange under Martian control. We're almost at the end of the chapter, goodness me, thank goodness for that. It's taken us forever to get through this one. Let's push on and get to the end, shall we?
For a space I could not understand it. And then I knew that it must be the red weed from which this faint irradiation proceeded. With that realization, my dormant sense of wonder, my sense of the proportion of things, awoke again. I glanced from that to Mars, red and clear, glowing high in the west, and then gazed long and earnestly at the darkness of Hampstead and Highgate. I remained a very long time upon the roof, wondering at the grotesque changes of the day. I recalled my mental states from the midnight prayer to the foolish card playing. I had a violent revulsion of feeling. I remember I flung away the cigar with a certain wasteful symbolism. My folly came to me with glaring exaggeration. I seemed a traitor to my wife and to my kind. I was filled with remorse. I resolved to leave this strange, undisciplined dreamer of great things to his drink and gluttony, and go on into London. There, it seemed to me, I had the best chance of learning what the Martians and my fellow men were doing. I was still upon the roof when the late moon rose.
Oh, thank goodness we got to the end of that chapter. Very important chapter in terms of H.G. Wells' socialist voice, his philosophical voice, his use of characterisation in the shape of the artilleryman, his use of character foils, lots and lots of things packed in there. But that's it. What I would also just mention that on the last page there, page 162, if you're in my copy, the Penguin Classics, the reference to the proper nouns Hampstead and Highgate up at North London there. So you've got Highgate sort of north and you've got Hampstead is sort of northwest. Again, if you've got your map out, get your maps out, get your maps out, get your maps out for the book. And have a little look at the map and you'll see where he's going and you'll see where he's heading to as well. Very important to chart his journey, I think, as you get through London and just see the journey he makes. It's quite an interesting way to read the book. I do recommend it. I think I've said it once or twice before, but I do mean it. Get your maps out, get your maps out, get your maps out for the book. All right, I'll see you again in chapter 8. Only a little short chapter. Oh, no, it's not. It's a long chapter. Oh, dear. Oh, no, not again. Chapter 9's nice and short. And then chapter 10, very short indeed. We're almost there. Almost there. Then we can get on to the next topic. Oh, my word, it never ends, does it? Never ends. Oh, dear. Oh, dear.